recording's on. Okay, thanks everybody. So today we're going to cover voice of the customer. Now I will tell you there's a lot to this, more than I actually expected. So I've got a sneaky suspicion we're going to have another one of these with some tips and tricks. Because there's just, like I said, there's a lot of little bitty kind of nuances to this that I didn't even have a time to explore. So I think that could be a good learning experience for everybody. But we're going to get through the basics today and then kind of create a survey and then talk about how to actually implement the things and stuff like that. So that should be good. Okay, this is me, of course, Mitch Milam. You can reach me at email or on Twitter or LinkedIn or YouTube. And remember, if you subscribe to the YouTube channel and anytime I post anything like today, it'll automatically notify you if you turn that on. So that way you don't have to worry about missing stuff, because I'm always delayed a few days getting the email out with a recording link in it. So don't forget to do that if you can. Okay, as we all know, I have everybody muted, so if you need to say something, just put a question in the question box or just raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Again, if you're going to CRMUG Summit in Nashville, then let me know. We'll be there for sure. I've got a class I'm teaching, I think, on Tuesday, and then I've got a couple of sessions throughout the week. I'm not really sure when they are yet. I haven't actually looked them up, but I'll be there hanging out off and on all week, so it should be a good time. Always is. Okay, I've got some courses coming out. Theoretically, for sure, the JavaScript development is shipping on Monday. Now, I'm going to be a babbling idiot by Monday afternoon, but that's a totally different problem for you guys, not to even worry about. The other two, I'm going to try to get them on the dates that I said, but I think I just bit off too much more than I could chew. I got a new tool that I'm using to service to do stuff, and it's a lot of fun, and but it's just taking longer than I expected. And what's funny is I already have all the content. That's what's so interesting about it. But I'm a bit of a perfectionist about some things, so everything should ship. But if you're interested in any of these things, then just drop me a line. I can send you information about it, or I'll email everybody when it comes down to it. So let's get into it. Voice of the customer. So what is voice of the customer? Well, it's an integrated survey tool. Respondents can take surveys on their phone, or on their tablet, or on their computer, basically anything that has an internet presence. You can use rules to trigger follow-up actions if you want, and survey analytics are automatically built into the system, which is really cool. Now, one thing about this is most of the assets that make up the behind the scenes for voice of the customer are Azure based. If you look in the docs, which are fairly comprehensive, quite honestly, it does quite clearly state that if you are in a situation where privacy is an issue, they can't guarantee where the data is going to be stored. So like, for instance, if you are in financial and you have to survey a customer and there could possibly be anything that could cause you a problem, then this is probably not a tool that you want to use, strictly because they can't guarantee the privacy. The data is secure, but that's not good enough for most of the higher end agencies and businesses, so they are quite clear on that. But everything is configured and managed inside of Dynamics 365. In fact, I don't even know where the assets are for Azure, but if you look in the docs, and I'll have a link in the show notes, it will list out all of the things that it uses, what the different pieces are and stuff. And there's a lot, quite honestly. Again, once the person actually responds back with the data, it's automatically synced back into Dynamics 365. Now, since it is a link between Azure and Dynamics 365, the data doesn't automatically flow in instantaneously. It's very quick, but again, depending on usage and whatever else is going on in servers, you could have a delay. So it's not going to be 100% real time. So you just kind of keep that in mind as you're doing this stuff. So you can publish 200 surveys, maximum of 250 questions. Interesting thing, you can add feedback to that to give you another 40. That's a really big survey. I don't think I would ever send that out. Nobody's ever going to finish it. You can have 25 pages per survey, and you can have a maximum of 1 million responses. Again, if you have 1 million responses, I'm just kind of shocked about what kind of user base you have. Does anybody have 1 million responses? Anybody at all? Nope. I should have asked who has actually used voice of the customer as a very funny. What I was doing, I would have asked that up front, which I did not. Let me have a show of hands about who is using it. Anybody? No, nobody. Oh, one. Alex is. Okay, cool. Okay. So a couple more limitations. You can send invitations via email, what we call distribution. We'll talk about it in a little bit here. There is a maximum of 10,000 you can send in a 24-hour period if you include piped data. This is basically where it's more or less adding replaceable parameters to the emails. And so you got to watch that. And then the maximum survey responses you can pull per day is 2,400. So that's once pulling back from the Azure service into CRM. So just kind of keep that in mind. I don't think most of us would actually hit those, quite honestly. They may though. A couple of terminology things I think I got right. So you'll see these NPS is Net Promoter Score. This is a scoring mechanism somebody came up with a very, very long time ago. Face, as far as I can tell, is a smiley face. There's actually a type of survey part or question that is actually a smiley face. That's how you rate stuff. That could be something different, but that's what it looks like to me. So in case you see these acronyms or other things in there, they just kind of mention them kind of in like passing. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And I kind of dug around. Net Promoter Score wasn't hard to find. Faces, I kind of made that up, so I hope I'm right. Okay, installation setup. Now, this is assuming you have the brand new version of Dynamics 365. If you don't have the brand new version, you're going to be installing a solution. But in this case, it comes more or less pre-installed, but not pre-configured. So what you do is you go into the application, the admin portal for Dynamics 365, and you open it up, and then you go over to the Applications tab, and you'll see a Voice of the Customer at the bottom, and it says Not Configured. Click on Manage, and it will display this box here. Like, okay, would you like to set this up? You pick an instance. This was just a temporary trial I set up. And accept the terms there and click Install. And if everything goes right, it will install. If it doesn't go right, it produces errors that may or may not make sense to you, and it may not work. I don't really know what the deal is there. One of the first things it does is, since there is a connection between Azure and CRM, they're trying to make sure that you understand this is your typical OAuth thing to verify and allow you to manually set that this is okay for these two types of things to be talking together. So should be nothing new here. Configuration for the Voice of the Customer settings is actually done under Settings. So Settings, Voice of the Customer configuration. Now the problem with that is, see on the next screen. Oh no, not that one. All you can see in most of the screens that I have is just, there are like 3 or 4 Voice of the Customer entries. You just have to hover your mouse over the top of the entry to actually see what the last word is, but it should be the top item under Settings, Voice of the Customer. It's going to be over on the right-hand side. So collateral configuration. So we can actually configure a few things. We can have a theme, which is how it's going to be, the colors that are presented, etc. We can add images and stuff to it. So those are all done under the collateral tab of the Voice of the Customer area. This is what the theme looks like. So typical, the way we've been doing things within CRM is you pick the colors using the hexadecimal code, started off with a pound sign. So we've got header, section, navigation bar, answer, progress, and then progress background. And then again, you can create your own themes to go with stuff if it matches your colors, etc. You can add logos and stuff like that. That's what the images and things are for. So if you don't like the colors they have, or you want them to match your website or your color scheme for your company, just go ahead and modify it like that. Okay, customization points. Now, the way this works with the Azure connection is it creates a lot of XML, and that seems to be the way everything is going. So it creates XML, and then that's what it shows over to Azure to actually work. That's what I've kind of been able to figure out. Some of these customization points are pure XML. Like everything you see here is actually on a form. It's just a series of XML, and I'll show you that to you in a minute. So we have some email templates, charts, dashboards, actions, and responses and things. So these are all configurable, but again, they're all XML. So just kind of interesting to kind of look at. So if you're not a big XML person or an HTML person, then you're going to have to kind of spin up on that or find somebody who is. Okay, so here is the flow for creating. Now, this is any type of survey process. Quite honestly, doesn't matter if it's Voice of the Customer or not. So basically, you plan your survey, you design it. So this is basically how it's going to appear. So the planning is more what questions are we going to ask. And part of what that's going to be is what questions are we going to ask, what type of answers are we expecting back, etc. Designing is actually putting it more or less on paper, so to speak. So you're picking the question type, you're arranging it on the screen, you're trying it out, you're doing the preview to make sure it works, and then you go to the next step. You can personalize it by actually adding replaceable parameters, very much like our templating system within workflows or email templates or things like that. Then on the way in from a person, so this is the respondent actually completing the survey, there are routing rules just like for email or for cases or things like that. So there's routing rules we can actually create to do something else. Then once we design all that, then we distribute the survey via web, email, whatever it might be. And once they take it, it all wraps up into some analytics. So these are both reports and dashboards. So this is a typical flow for things to go from actually determining what you need to do to actually analyzing what you got back from the customer. Any questions on that? Okay. Planning, and I got this off of out of the help online, and it's actually pretty simple. Very, very, very long time ago, I used to work for a market research firm here in town, and they did some very fascinating things, and just really cool to see how things work. But surveys should take less than 5 minutes. That's a pretty good rule. Otherwise, people get bored and go home. So always remember that. Less than 5 minutes, less than 10 questions. What questions are required? That's the big thing. So like if you're doing any kind of follow-up and you need a name and a phone number or a name and email, that needs to be part of that. Okay. Then you need to figure out what distribution method are you going to email people? Like for instance, now personally I use Click Dimensions since that's where all my stuff is within my CRM system. So you get it about a month ago, a little bit less, I sent out an email about webinar topics. So that was just a survey that I created with Click Dimensions. I have it on my website. And then what I did, I first emailed everyone on my list. And in that case, what I did is I pre-populated the email address because that's how it comes back in to recognize who the person is. And that ties it back to one of you guys so that I can actually have follow-up questions because I have questions and more clarification and other information. So depending on how you are doing surveys, your method of distribution is going to vary. Okay, so design. So this is a new survey. So I created one called Favorite Ice Cream, and a few things here. So standard name, description, close date, restrict multiple responses. Do we take anonymous? Do we have them fill out a CAPTCHA? Are we doing social sharing? Allow people to unsubscribe. So basically, if they got the survey and they don't want to be taken off your list, they set that to they click on something, it will actually unsubscribe them. The actual runtime, you can have a theme that we talked about earlier with the logo. We can have a progress bar at the top. We can show the page numbers if you want. Progress bars and page numbers are really good to keep people informed of where they are and how much longer they have. Because again, people get kind of irritated. I don't like to take long surveys. And when I have a survey that pops up and I don't know how long it is, I was like, do I really want to sit here for this? I'm being a nice guy. I don't need this in my life. Okay, think about that. So a progress bar and a page number can sometimes help if you have more than one page. Header text, runtime title, survey already taken block. In one of the others, the other screen, if you take it, basically you send the link to somebody and they fill it out and then they click on the link again. This is the text that shows up saying, hey, you've already taken this. You only get one shot. Survey completed link if you want to direct them somewhere. If you want to redirect a header, footer, privacy text, survey text, all the other things that go with it. Navigation, the previous and next buttons and submit buttons at the bottom. So you can personalize those, next, previous, or forward, back, or, go, for instance, for submit, things like that. So this is all configurable per survey. The invitation link text. So we'll walk through actually adding one to an email. And what this is going to do is this is the text that is actually going to be displayed that has a hyperlink that goes to your survey behind the scenes. So this is the text that's going to show up. There's a couple snippets that will be generated when we first publish it. Can it run inside of an iframe? This is if you're embedding it into your website. And then some other things about how you're going to do the responses. Okay, so these are just typical just data points that you need to collect and decide upon. This is part of your planning stage at the very beginning. What do we want to do? How do we want to show it? And then fill all that out when you get to it. Probably with many companies, I think you're going to find they have a specific way of surveying. And so what they'll do is they'll like, okay, for my survey, these are the things that are always going to fill out exactly the same way so that you have consistency in your surveys. That's if you survey your customer base a lot or frequently, maybe not a lot, but frequently. Now, this is kind of interesting. When I first started looking at the voice of the customer, whenever it shipped, a couple of years ago, I'm like, well, where do I add the questions? And I couldn't find them anywhere. Well, what they did, something a little bit different back then from the normal design of Dynamics CRM at the time, Dynamics 365 now, is they have different forms for different pieces of the puzzle. So the main form, which is the data part we just went through, is for surveys, the survey data itself. The designer is where you physically actually add questions to your survey. So rather than them having a button that popped a web page up, they just had a form that had the page embedded in it. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. And then finally, dashboard will give you some statistics on the survey itself. So again, rather than putting these on independent pages, they just put them on forms that were part of the system. And again, they just point to other assets. So pretty interesting way of doing it. This is what the designer looks like. So you have a welcome message at the very beginning, then you can have multiple pages, and finally a completion page. And you can actually delete these ones on the left-hand side if you want to. So you've got a welcome message, and then on the right-hand side, you have your survey parts that allow you to pick what types of questions you want to answer and things like that. Here is a list of all the different things that we can use. Okay, so we can create sections, different types of long and short answers, single modal responses, rating, ranking, net promoter score, customer or CSAT, smiles. Those are all specific and they display differently. They all pretty much collect the same type of data, which is going to be a number from, say, 1 to 5 or 1 to 6 or something like that. So most of these are collecting a numerical value, but what they're doing is they're displaying it in a different way. And this is just, to allow the customer to actually understand better, the question. That's what this is for. Okay. You can personalize this by adding what they call piping or piped data from either. They have basically, these are, believe it or not, these are actually variable names. So user, product, service, customer, location, date, time, and there's two others, other one and other two. And I'll talk about those later and how we actually do this. So once we have our survey designed, we're going to figure out what we're going to do with it when we get it back. So again, how many people have ever created a routing rule for email? Anybody? Show a hand. Amy, Hummer, Lisa. Oh, okay. Okay, so a few. Great. Okay, so this is exactly the same thing. So you give it a name, and then you specify the conditions at which you're going to operate, and then what to do next. So what you're doing is you're looking for specific things in the survey, and then, so for instance, one way to do a survey is the end of a case. So, if you open a case with Microsoft, they send you an email. A lot of companies, they'll send you a survey to find out what you thought about the process or the handling of your case and things like that. And you could tie that directly back to the case. So one of the actions could be, if you're very satisfied, hey, go put it in, do something over here. If you're very dissatisfied, route it to a manager or route it to the engineer's manager. So you can do these kind of things based on data that comes into the system from the survey itself. So again, just like the email routing rules that we use for cases in most of the time. Okay, the distribution, we can either distribute anonymously or non-anonymous. So basically that just means anonymous is we're just going to put up a survey up on our website and just have people do it, or we don't care about getting the person's name because there's not going to be a secondary follow-up to that. In most cases, like when I survey people, I put their email address in there and ask for their name and stuff so that if I have questions on what they said, I can follow up and get that. If you do anonymous, you have none of that. So if they make some kind comment, okay, I'd like to see this, but then they don't give you any background on why is that important. Sometimes the answers to a survey are important to follow up with. Okay, so sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. So non-anonymous is where you're actually sending it to a known person. In most cases, this is going to be email, or make them put in their name and their email address so that you can do that. So that turns them into somebody that you know. You can distribute via email on the website or some other thing that they haven't thought of. The pipe data is kind of interesting, and this took me a very long time to figure out, but as I mentioned earlier, we have several things for pipe data, several fields, and all they are more or less what I would call a tag. So they have a customer tag. Well, a customer is just, I'm going to reference this in this place. So the tag is called customer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say equals Bob. Now, this is going to hard code it for Bob, but what's going to happen is when it takes this in, it's going to pre-populate depending on how I set it up. So, okay, I want the customer pipe tag to be inserted at this location. And then what it would do is when it generates a survey, it would look for the customer tag and replace it with the word Bob. And like I said, we have about 6 or 7 of these things. So customer can be the first name, last name. And then if you want more than that, what you're going to have to do is there's another one, another two. So maybe customer is the first name, other one is the last name, and then other two is the email address. And then that way there can be reference and pre-populated for people. Because remember, you don't want to ask people for information that you already know about. That's one of the keys to doing this stuff. Okay? Because nothing makes people more irritated than fill out information that they already know. Okay? Finally, the analytics part, we have dashboards built into the system, and then we have reports that ship with it as well. Now, I don't have a lot of data in this because it's just kind of, I just kind of was playing around with it, so it's one of my test systems. So it's not a lot of data, but we can at least walk through that. Okay, that was really quick, I know. So what questions do you guys have? Anything at all? Nothing? I should just be quiet and start showing the product. Is that what you want? Okay. Okay, let's go create a new one. Favorite color, spelled Americanized. Okay, so it gave it a description, and then this is where you go and put your other stuff in. So do we allow people to fill this out more than once? Reham has a question. Let me unmute you, Reham. Okay, you're unmuted.
Hey, Mitch, how's it going?
Good.
I have a question regarding 2 things that you showed in your presentation. The first one was, I think it's in the slide where you talked about different fields that you can set up in configuration, and one of them is the include or iframe or something like that.
Yes.
And my coworker and I did some research, and we found out that this is if you want to embed it inside of a website. But have you seen any or did any testing to know if you can embed it such a survey inside of an email, like what Google does when you can embed a survey inside of an email?
We'll cover that in a minute, but basically what I've seen, it's a link. So basically you click on the link and it sends you to a survey.
Okay.
I have not seen, like I said, there's a lot to this, and some of it's kind of typical. There's not a lot of deep documentation. So what I did is I've literally just been clicking on stuff and seeing what happens, and then doing like lots of Google searching.
Gotcha.
Okay. But yeah, I understand where you're saying.
And then I
haven't seen that. Yeah, go ahead.
The second question is actually a requirement that we've seen for some clients as well, is that whenever we finish this demo right here, can you think about ways, or can you tell us if you've seen ways where we can, for example, limit the number of surveys that you send out per a CSR or per a rep, saying that this rep needs 2 surveys per day? Have you seen it? And if you did, how was it implemented?
Oh, I have never seen anything like that. That's kind of complicated.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so again, you pick the theme, header text, like color survey. Do we have runtime title? I'll leave that alone. This is the thing for only one has, you can only take once. Here's one for survey. We can have a custom link to a page if we want. Next and previous, we're not going to have pages, so that doesn't matter on that. And there's a bunch of other stuff. And then at the bottom, under advanced, we have just basically, okay, you can close the invitation. So basically, when they can't submit the survey, some surveys, depending on what they are and how they work, you may want to have a life to them. Like, for instance, like the case survey I mentioned earlier. They've got a week or 2 weeks, 14 days to fill it out. If it's after that, then you don't care because that's a policy that you have. That way, people don't just come back and do stuff. Or if you have some kind of, you're collecting data and you have a deadline for your analysis, then you put a deadline on it, because what would happen is you don't want people filling stuff out later because it doesn't do any good, pretty much. Okay. So there is that. Go ahead and save this. Okay. And let's go over to the design. Now, a couple things here. You can publish it. You can preview it. You can export the translations if you want to export it, and all the other stuff that goes with your standard CRM type of record. Let's go to the Designer tab. So slightly different interface. So I'm going to click in here. There's an edit button over here. Looks like a little pencil. Okay, save that and close it. So generally, this would be just stuff that you want to kind of do an introduction on, and you can, for page 1, you can actually start the questions here. So what we can do is do a short answer for name. Save that. Another one for last name. And a final one for email. And then what I'm going to do a single response. Okay, purple, last one. And then finally, we have these settings here. So this is very satisfied to sad. So I'm going to modify this. And this is going to be your Friday survey. I don't know why I keep throwing E's on the end of all my stuff. I guess I'll move back to Europe or something. Okay, and we have different types. The big buttons, a scale, radio buttons, drop down list. We're going to use big buttons, which are going to scare the heck out of you when I show them to you. Okay, so first name, last name, email, what's your favorite color? What is the smile that the face that the best describes your day? Let's go preview this real quick. Okay, so basically, again, welcome page, optional. Okay, first name, last name, email, favorite color is blue, and I am not engaged, delighted, thanks. When it said big buttons, it was not kidding big buttons. Okay, probably just from looking at this type of answer here, if I did this kind of thing, this would be the only thing I would ask, because it's kind of, I'm not going to say obnoxious, but it's pretty big. What if we go and change this, by the way? To a scale. Let's try that out. Uh-oh. I messed it up, sorry. I wasn't reading my thing. So the scale. Oh, scale minimum. Okay, there's that. Now let's go preview this. Okay, so as you saw there, basically I went from a smiley face to just a gauge that people can fill out. Okay, so from 1 to 4, or probably, you can change it wherever you want. Okay. Okay, so a couple things we can do here, like for email. Email is required. I'm going to wrap this to my email field. Now, I didn't actually get to play with this all the way through, but what happens is I think it should create a contact, I think. Okay, see that. Some validation down here. Okay, so this is an email field. So what you need to hunt up is a regular expression for an email. So does anybody not know what a regular expression is? That's kind of a programmer term. Do I need to explain that to everybody, what that is? Yes, please. Okay. Okay, just look at it. Okay. You see this thing right here? That's a regular expression. What this is a way to describe how to verify a piece of textual data. Kumar says a sequence of characters that defines a search pattern. That's exactly correct. So believe it or not, this is actually what you would put in there. So let's go copy that and we'll put it in here. Where'd that be right there? So the cool thing about it is there are sites like this, and this is, as you saw, I just picked one at random. There are variations of how to check for this, and then this is a diagram of what it's checking. So basically, it's checking for specific characters, it's checking for specific things it doesn't want to see, and then it basically is just using it. So, okay, and they give you some examples in JavaScript if you do this. So this is how we actually do some of these things. Okay, so there's that. Okay, so I'm closing that, and I'm going to publish this. Okay, publish on the server. I can test it. Smith. Oh my gosh, that's a bad email. Bobby@smith.com. That is a valid email. See how that worked? That's pretty cool, huh? Blue, I'm feeling excellent today. I need a nap and a margarita. Not in that order. Actually, in that order, yes. And then I'm going to submit this. And it says, hey, by the way, you're in test mode. This doesn't work. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so that's how you actually create a survey. So again, for the basic surveys, it doesn't take a lot of time to do these things. Okay, now let's go get some interesting stuff out of this. So let's go back to the survey, the data part of it. And you are going to see that it's got some kind of funky things down here. We have a survey email snippet, and then we also have an anonymous link. If we click on the anonymous link, what it's going to do is it's going to actually show us this survey that we created, just like the one we tested. So let's do this. Bob Smith, bobsmith.com. Oh, that's interesting. What is wrong with that? Oh, that's funny. Didn't like a capital B. I like that. Bob was feeling okay today. I'm going to submit that. Okay, thank you for completing our survey, and we're done. Okay, then we have these snippets here. So I'm going to copy the, and I can also do this up here. Copy, allow access, and if I go over here, it has this thing here. Like, that's very fascinating. This is just really weird looking, okay? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to create an email template. So I go to Settings, Templates. I'm going to create a new email template. And I'm going to say New. I'm going to tie this to a contact. I'm just going to call this Survey 10. And then what I'm going to do, just for giggles, I'm going to embed this in there. Okay, just like that. Okay, well, I happen to have a contact record up for me, and I'm going to go and I'm going to add a new email activity. And I'm going to insert a template. I'm going to pick my Survey 10. And it just adds in there. So automatically, if you guys never use templates in CRM, that's what it does. It gives the subject populated automatically and populates the description. Now, I don't know exactly what part in time or what point in time they put this template and stuff inside of CRM, but what's this? If I save this, it converts it into that. And this is what the user would get. Okay? So if I send it, it will send me that link. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my survey. Now, an interesting thing about this, and I was playing with this over and over again, it appears you can modify a published survey. But there could be some restrictions on it. Like I said, I don't exactly know. So what I want invitation link text. Okay, save that. So basically this is the invitation link text. Click here to complete our customer satisfaction survey. So I'm going to go back over here. Oops, wrong one. And let's try this again and see if I have to do something. Email, insert a template, choose 10, save this, boom. Okay. So now when I click here, that's just now, here's one very important thing that I've seen. So what I did is I clicked save and it converted the shortcut into a link, right? So let me tell you what, just delete that. And I'm going to insert another template, which is the same template, nothing new. Yes. Is that working? Okay, hit save again. I get an error. Cannot insert duplicate key. What I think this is this email has a survey associated with it in another table. And so what happens is we can only have one survey per one survey link per email. In fact, the first time I saw this, what I did is there are several different kinds of snippets that you can pull out. I put all of them into one email and it fixed the first one and all of a sudden threw the error up. And then I found out by just trial and error, it was because it only wanted one survey link. And since I've already saved this email, it automatically converted this into a link and then associated it with the survey. So the reason I'm pointing this out is because if you go to edit stuff and you do a save and it converts it, you're stuck at that point. You can't do it. But the only way you can get around it is to actually create another email. In fact, right now I can't do anything to this because it's just gone. So yes. Go find me again. Okay. So if I go back to the survey and I go to the dashboard, so survey invites sent out, total sent, responses, current responsive, active. So basically this percentage, so total response count by survey, percentage of all routes. So basically it's counting the route, and this is customer satisfaction rating by survey. And down here is just data about that. Now, it knew that I sent this out, but it doesn't have a response back yet. And this is the thing I was talking about earlier, where there is a delay coming back. Either that or we just have some data that's off. Yeah, this is the part that I was kind of playing with right before the webinar, and I couldn't figure out why the data is not coming back, because I think I have responses. No, I don't have responses. That's interesting. Oh, no responses there. Interesting. So this looks like a data delay coming back in. So like I said, I don't know what the delay is. I have seen people talk about it in the past. So that's pretty much it. Okay, so that's kind of a quick overview of everything. What questions do you guys have? Any at all? None? You don't look quite group today. Okay. So anyway, like I said, this is built into the system. Like I said, I use click dimensions because it has a little bit finer logic on some stuff. There's a thing called skip logic. Is anybody familiar with skip logic? So basically, what that is the ability to actually ask different questions based on different answers. So what it allows you to do is to go down a specific. If they answer provide an answer A for one question, or B, if you go down A, it would send out a different path to ask different questions. So, for instance, you could actually maybe do that on product. If the product is say CRM online, go down this, ask questions over here. But if it's exchange online, go ask questions over here. Man, that's a possibility. It's probably not viable. It's a possibility. So, any questions? Raymond, where's it at? The VLC module, that was in the beginning of the presentation. You actually add it from within Dynamics 365 from the admin portal. It's either going to be a solution depending on your version or an application. Anybody else? Herb, yeah, VLC is included in Dynamics 365. Dan, are you limited to seeing surveys to just contacts? I don't think it matters, quite honestly. I haven't seen anything that tells you you do it one way or the other. One of the things that was in here was, do we create a new lead for anonymous responses? Actually, let me go check something real quick. Hang on. So yeah, so pretty much it should be any email enabled system, I would say. Yeah, that data's not flowing back into CRM. We should have a Bob Smith guy there. Hey, Morn, yes, as I mentioned at the very beginning, all my webinars are put on my YouTube channel. So please go subscribe to that and you'll get it. But yeah, so later today, after it gets through processing, I'll put it up there. Any other questions on this? Nope.